One of the most important parts about mixing concrete is getting all the ingredients to bind together properly in the mixer. Part of my process to achieve this is to add the sand, gravel and Portland cement slow enough for the mixer to do its work without getting any dry pockets in the mix.
You come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
In the previous episode, we poured the first part of our concrete that'll form the foundation for our charcoal pavers. I'm splitting the concrete pour into multiple sessions to make it more manageable for one person to get this volume of concrete in the forms. With the first two steps set solid, I'm ready to start preparing for the triangular platform that sits above them. I'm preparing a piece of plastic conduit to use as an ag pipe to help with drainage under this triangular slab. Having small holes in this pipe will help it catch and direct water and pass it under our slab. This will help avoid water erosion and subsidence, which causes cracking in your foundations. Once the pipe's prepared with holes drilled every couple of 100 mil all the way along, I dig a shallow trench to set it in and then add sand and gravel on top. This is part of the system that'll help catch water as it wants to travel under our foundation. I complete this process by smoothing out the sand and gravel with my trowel and then compacting it by walking around on top of it. I then smooth it off one last time with my trowel as the concrete will be poured directly over the top of this. We've now created an efficient water evacuation system for under our foundation. Just like we did on the previous concrete pour, we're using a combination of heavy 12mm rebar with lighter mesh on top. With a large flat slab like this, I want to use some structural design for the heavy 12mm rebar. I want to cover all the perimeters of the form and also add some cross pieces that'll create some triangular structure to our layout. This will help the foundation hold together and avoid cracking in the future. I'm tying these new steel elements into the rebar that we set in the previous slab. We set the rebar in the previous slab at a height of 50 mil below the surface of our concrete. So by tying my rebar directly to it and using the plastic supports over the sand and gravel, we'll end up with all the steel elements sitting at the appropriate depth inside our concrete slab. The lighter mesh I'm laying over the 12mm rebar is actually a fencing product, but perfectly adequate for a slab that's only going to have foot traffic on it. I set the mesh with a 50mm gap from the edge of our formwork and secure it to the 12mm rebar with wire. This ensures the steel will stay watertight inside the concrete and not rust. It's important to use tie wire to secure the mesh to the rebar, so when we're agitating our concrete, we don't push the steel out of alignment. I cut the last piece of mesh with my grinder in place, as it's an easier and more accurate way to get a correct fit. With all our steel elements secure and fitted in place, I'm ready to pour concrete into this next step. On projects like this that involve a large amount of concrete, I get a gravel and sand premix delivered by truck in the square meter. This is much more economical than using the pre-mixed bags of concrete you get from a hardware store. I then use separate bags of Portland cement to add the binding ingredient that holds all the concrete together. This also allows me to use my own customized formula for the strength of the concrete. In this case, I'm using a 6:1 ratio, which creates a really hard, solid slab. In our first concrete pour, I was using plastic tubs to help manage the concrete, but for this pour, I can pour the concrete directly into my wheelbarrow from the mixer and then dump it into the form. This is an easier and more efficient way of getting the concrete to where we need it.
Breaking feedback.
pushing the steel reinforcement out of alignment, I use pieces of plywood to support the wheelbarrow full of concrete as I dump it into the form. For large flat pours of concrete like this, I use my rake to spread the concrete out. This is also part of the process of constantly agitating your concrete to push the air out of it. The strategy for getting a strong concrete pour in a slab like this is to start the pour in one corner and work your way out, trying to keep a constant wet edge on the concrete mass. Concrete will stiffen quite rapidly, especially on a warm day like today. So by constantly pouring concrete out on the wet edge, we keep it flexible enough to keep pushing it through the steel reinforcement. When the wet concrete starts to get to the edge of our step, I use my trowel to agitate it, so I can push it deep into the previous step we poured and make sure we get a really good concrete adhesion from the old concrete onto the new concrete.
Are we just hallucinating now? This is the final, I just take a bow. While it all falls apart, guess you can't win them all. Oh no.
When I've added enough volume of concrete to reach the top of our forms, I start the screeding process. I'm using a dead straight piece of framing timber, rubbing it back and forth on the top of the forms to flatten out the concrete. I use my trowel to fill voids as I work the screeder back and forth.
One way, gonna lay down, be still, won't waste another tear. Wait till it disappears.
My final step in each of these separate slabs we're pouring is to set the rebar in the concrete that'll interconnect all these slabs together. I slightly tap the rebar mesh into the wet concrete, then seat it 50 ml under the surface of the following slab, just like we did in our first pour. I tidy up any concrete that's spilt over the edge of our step and let this slab set up overnight before we prepare for the following slab we'll pour the next day. With the foundation complete for this triangle platform and the first two steps coming off the deck, we move on to the final 3 square steps that take us up to the driveway. The heavy rain overnight has reminded us while we're putting drainage underneath our foundations. I set up to install an ag pipe under our foundation just like we did on the previous slab. I'm cutting a piece of 40 ml PVC pipe to size, drilling a few holes in it, then trenching it in just before the concrete that we poured yesterday. I'm also adding a thin layer of gravel, which is all part of helping the water move underneath our slab without disturbing it. I then wash the whole area down before we start preparing the reinforcement mesh. I've pulled the forms off for the first 2 steps because I needed to reuse a piece of timber for the very last platform up the top there.
It ties into the concrete pour we're going to be doing tomorrow, so we had to get that in place. So that's why I pulled these off. Gave us a chance to check out how our forms come out. We've got the first of the 3 platforms poured today. I needed to get this one set in place before we pour our next slab tomorrow, because it's going to pour underneath here just like we did this one. We're basically going to repeat the same process 3 times over till we get to the top.
With this last piece of formwork in place, I can make preparations for the final drainage system for the last 2 platforms. There's a lot more water trying to move through this upper part of our staircase, so I'm using larger ag pipe.
This should help evacuate all the water that's running down this hill, flooding our job site. This way the water can be caught by the ag pipe and be redirected out here where there's going to be a garden later, so it won't hurt anyone to have the water coming out here.
I come across many different types of soil and ground conditions. In this particular area of South Gippsland, it has a really high rainfall and the soil has a lot of clay content in it. Due to the constant saturation of the soil, it develops little springs through the system. And in this case, we have a small spring of trickling water at the top of our platform staircase. I'm adding a few extra pieces of ag pipe to help capture this water and redirect it out and underneath our foundation. I'm also adding a thick bed of 20mm gravel as part of the system of creating a stable platform for our concrete. By using a sharp, cracked gravel product of all the same size, it creates small air pockets in between the gravel. This is how the water can pass through underneath the concrete without creating any subsidence. After installing all the elements of our drainage system, we can already see a significant amount of water trickling out of the ag pipe on the bottom section. Redirecting this water is also going to help our concrete pour. Having too much water infiltrating the concrete will make for a weak foundation. I'm now ready to start adding the steel reinforcement elements we've been adding to all the slabs.
Now everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it. Everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it.
One of the most important parts about mixing concrete is getting all the ingredients to bind together properly in the mixer. Part of my process to achieve this is to add the sand, gravel and Portland cement slow enough for the mixer to do its work and mix them thoroughly together without getting any dry pockets in the mix. I regularly take a look inside the mixer to make sure I've got a good consistency and add more water when necessary. I also try to keep a consistent amount of material on my shovel so the ratio of the gravel, sand, Portland cement comes out correctly. I add the Portland cement in small quarter shovel loads to give the mixture a chance to bind this in with the sand and gravel. When all the ingredients are mixed through thoroughly, I dump it into my wheelbarrow and add it to our form.
Your eyelids and perfect lips got me rushing pen and I'm so lit. Like lilies you open, the fragrance goes to my head, my darling. I get everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it. We've earned
foundation. Join me on the next episode as we remove the formwork and start the process of sticking our charcoal pavers on.
Come closer, dance for me. Easy, tiger, easy, let your hair down. Come closer, let me see all your million faces and all your million mistakes. You don't need to hide. Come closer so that we can be